Today I met with representatives of the Baptist faith. Yes, they are in the building, going around to talk to politicians and certainly raise the fact that Newstart and the impact of Newstart on families across the country is creating a real issue. The fact that Newstart has not increased in so long. And the members of the Baptist faith made sure, and these were senior denominational leaders, influential pastors, leaders from Baptist Care Australia and Baptist World Aid Australia. Now that's just one group of thousands of Australians across the country who are very concerned in relation to where Newstart is today. These are people of Christian faith who, by their own description, are representative of Australia's middle class in their values and circumstance, and that's what they reiterated many times in the conversation today. And what they'd come to see me about was a clear and direct, and they want to see the government raise the rate of Newstart. They're concerned by seeing the people they deliver services to, minister to and share our community, that they're living in poverty with all the issues that brings with it. They're concerned at the kids who are born into poverty, who grow up in poverty and in turn raise their own families in poverty. They're concerned at people they know who are having to make ends meet on as little as $245 a week. These Baptist leaders who spoke with me about their concerns with the people who are at risk of falling through the cracks of our so-called social safety net. Last month, The Guardian Australia revealed the number of people claiming Newstart had increased in about 10% of areas across the country, despite a national improvement. Remote unemployment hotspots are among those getting worse in the past year. In the Northern Territory, Palmerston, a satellite city just outside of Darwin, a wonderful place, but it's recorded a more than 20% increase in the number of people claiming Newstart or youth allowance, jumping from 1,119 to 1,366 individuals, an increase of 247 just for that area alone. Doesn't sound much, does it? But it certainly is a lot for the people who have to be on it. In the outback, Northern Territory communities of Katherine and the Barkly region, there was a more than 16% spike in the number of people on benefits, while the Darwin suburbs, Litchfield and East Arnhem Land all recorded an increase of more than 3%. In outback South Australia, which includes the remote Indigenous communities of the Anangu, Pudinjara, Yankujarra lands, more than 2,000 people are claiming Newstart or youth allowance, with the number up about 5% year on year. These are people who are already labouring under the Community Development Program, CDP, earning just $11 an hour. We heard evidence during the Senate inquiry and during estimates about the effect this was having on communities and people. People in remote communities are already familiar with the consequences of being penalised by having their benefits taken away. We heard about the consequences of taking money away from mums and dads trying their best to make ends meet. The government's own report into CDP found social problems had increased since the introduction of the program, including an increase in break-and-enters to steal food, predominantly by children and young people, to steal food. It found an increase in domestic and family violence and an increase in financial coercion and family fighting. There was also an increase in mental health problems, feelings of shame, depression, sleep deprivation and hunger. It said the CDP had the opposite of its intended effect to get people off welfare or sit-down money. The report stated, and I quote, "There was no evidence from the research in this evaluation to suggest that penalties are an effective way to generate engagement." Yet this government continues to take the approach that people on benefits somehow deserve to be penalised. You talk about jobs. Well, where are they in our remote communities? The previous minister made big promises about the jobs component of CDP. I spoke earlier in the Senate today and said there are around 33,000 people on CDP, and the previous Minister for Indigenous Affairs said there would be 6,000 jobs of those 33,000. 6,000 jobs subsidised were supposed to commence in February this year. That very quietly became downgraded to 1,000 jobs, and now, wait for it, the government has very quietly put out a package of just 100 subsidised CDP jobs. 100 from 6,000, all quietly brought down. No accountability, and certainly no certainty to those 6,000 people of the 33,000 people who were waiting, hoping, and those organisations who believed this government in that plan to at least provide 6,000 subsidised jobs. So from 6,000 remote area jobs to 100, that's quite a reduction in employment opportunities that was meant to come. This government keeps repeating a mantra of welfare to work, but they have very quietly conceded the difficulty with trying to secure jobs in the welfare system they are entrenching in remote communities. The approach of imposing penalties, rules and regulations from above and afar is stifling economic opportunity, certainly discouraging entrepreneurship and any hope of enterprise. Practical challenges, such as needing to travel to buy groceries, and attend medical appointments, as these services are either too expensive or simply not available in these communities. There are significant extras in terms of expense faced by people living in remote and regional Australia. Then there's the impact of poor road infrastructure on vehicles. As the Baptist leaders told me today, the current Newstart rate is often forcing families to go hungry, especially in our regional and remote areas of Australia. Families are being hard-pressed to have enough money to spend on healthy food. Some community stores have reported a decline in the sales of fresh food, of fresh veggies and fruit, already sold at high prices because of freight and other costs. The NT government's latest market basket survey shows that the average price for a basket of healthy food in a Northern Territory remote store was $319 more than in a NT major supermarket. And that's a gap of 60% between healthy food costs in remote stores compared to big supermarkets in the major centres. This is despite major efforts in recent years to improve access to affordable food in remote areas through licensing schemes and improved store infrastructure. Baptist Care NT in the Territory works with Food Bank NT to provide direct food support for struggling families and individuals. They told me today they don't come close to meeting the needs in Darwin, let alone in the regional areas of the Northern Territory. We know that the inadequacy of Newstart is not simply a welfare issue. It is not simply an economic issue. It is also a health and well-being issue. Newstart recipients are 6 times more likely to face poor health outcomes. They are more likely to suffer from multiple conditions. They're more likely to suffer from mental ill health, and they're more likely to be hospitalised. Poor health is a barrier to work, and we all know this. There are many additional social costs involved with entrenched disadvantage, and those costs are alleviated as the cycle of disadvantage is broken. Newstart is inadequate. People are struggling to afford the basics and the essentials, and they're struggling to meet their medical and healthcare costs.